Welcome. It is Thursday, so it must mean it is Painting with Shawna Day. Welcome, and if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, like my page. And if you're interested in receiving a weekly newsletter that goes with the live stream that has pictures that I don't put anyplace else. This week's newsletter had pictures of my interaction with a female red-winged blackbird feeding her young at the nest and getting all sorts of damselflies and bugs in her mouth, in her beak, to feed her young, and it was such it was a great couple of hours, and it took time for her to trust me. So you're there for some time, but it was totally fun to share this with people who get my weekly newsletter, which is connected to the live stream. Today we are continuing to work on the Peony, and I ran into a bit of a problem, and I'm going to show you what happened when I was working on the background. The water paint color was fairly loose, and I was moving quickly, and so I ended up some drops of green on where the petals are. And I want to show you oh, excuse me. I want to show you how I dealt with that problem. So let's go over there. Oh, excuse me. And I don't have any water down here. Okay. Well, that's not true. I do have water. Okay. So here we are with the Peony. You can see what I got done in the background. And I'm really pleased with this background. It's kind of got some variation in it. And when I chop the painting down, I mean, I do it right to the edge. But you can see that I have staples that I'm going to end up cutting on this side and then squaring this painting off. There's not going to be a lot of background. So here is where I have dots of green, dark green paint. Now, when that happens, if you immediately try to fix it, you're going to make things worse. The big secret with watercolor is let it dry. And once you let it dry, then you can very easily lift it up. It takes a little patience, and it takes a little patience to make sure you're doing it right. The other thing I do when I'm painting is I cover my background so that I won't get a drop of water in my background. I don't want to mess that up. So I'm going to take this sort of bigger one here, and maybe I should, I don't know if you can see it clearly. I hope you can. And I'm just going to dot a little bit of water on. It's going to reactivate that paint, and then I'm going to take a cotton Q-tip and I'm going to dry it off. And I'm going to do that again, because every time I add more water, it will pull a little bit more paint up, and I pull it off. And I just keep doing that until it gets to the point that I don't have to do that. So this just takes a little bit of patience, but I bet you if I told you that I had a drop in this area, you would have a hard time finding it, because I've been able to remove most of the paint. Now I'm going to come in with my brush, and I'm going to touch it and really move it, and I'm going to rub it again with my tip of my brush. This brush is a golden Taklon, and so it has a little bit of stiffness to it. And so it has just enough stiffness to be able to pull up that paint. And pretty soon that dark spot is just a small green spot. Now I have other spots in here too that I'm going to do while I'm doing this. And I'm going to kind of get them to reactivate here. I should probably removed all of them, because of course when you get a flick, they just flick all over the place. Come and take that back, take this one back, take this one back, and I see that I have a larger one here that must have just been going beyond, and then take this one back. I try, you know, when I'm painting, I try to be as careful as I can with my background when I'm doing my background, but, you know, sometimes things happen. And again, just pulling it up, 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 rolling it along. Most problems with watercolor come when people get impatient with it and they move too quickly and they sort of force things along. They think, oh, I'll grab it right away. But if you let it dry, it really does make a big difference. You don't have as much problems, it doesn't spread as far, and you can control it. There has not been many problems that I've had with watercolor that I haven't been able to fix to a certain level. So I'm rubbing it now and then coming in with a clean Q-tip. So you know, pay attention. Rub it with a lot of water on it and then roll the Q-tip. Rub it with a lot of water on it and roll the Q-tip. We don't want to smear the paint around, and pretty soon it's going to be light enough because I'm pretty sure that these petals are fairly dark, and even if they're not, it'll be soft enough you won't even notice them. And here's the last one I'm going to do here, and then roll my Q-tip over to pull this. So there you go. I've dealt with the little dots that I had there. And we can get painting. So the very first thing I want to remind you is the colors that we're using. I'm going to have the colors down on the table next to me, but we're using quinacridone magenta for the main color, permanent rose, rose madder, quinacridone red, new gamboge, because there's some areas that are really glowing and show yellow, like a golden, a sort of orangey color. A little bit of Winsor phthalo green, blue shade, and for darkening the reds, because that's opposite on the color wheel, and neutral tint for also doing that, and a little bit of alizarin crimson, because that's a very pretty red that will fit on here. So let's get going. I've covered the background so I don't get any dots of water on it, because that is a... And if you get one, those Q-tips, keep them close by and immediately touch it as fast as you can and just ignore it. And hopefully then it will, you have gotten the water, gotten it. So I'm going to take the color list here and move it aside, move my image. So I have the top facing me. So this is the top of the painting that I'm working on, and I will work to the bottom and continue working. Okay, so let's look at, where am I? Here. Let's find this here. I'm going to take my brush and I want to put that water in place. And yeah, and I'm looking at the shapes that I'm seeing. And you'll notice the edge is kind of rough. You might not actually see this. I'm not even sure you can see this part. Oh yeah, you can. The edge is kind of rough. Well, I have saved the background so that I can come in and straighten that out and do the last little bits of fixing it and making it look good. Okay, and I see that there's... I'm not sure that's what I'm seeing. I'm going to put a little bit of that touch of orange in there just to glow it. It's not totally a yellow, but I think that will add an interesting... And then I'm going to do... This is going to be quite a dark petal. You can see that. So I can be a little bit more... put a little bit more paint on it as a result. But I don't want to put too much paint because I don't want... You can't go backwards. You can only go forwards. So, and then I'm seeing that there's a very light part there. So I'm going to just clean my brush, dry it off, and I'm going to move the paint that I have close by and move it into place. so that it keeps it as light as possible in that area. Go right to the edge of the petals. Okay, let's move to the next one. And I'm looking at, oh, interesting. Huh. Okay. I am going to come into this one here. I'm going to move a piece of paper so I can put my hand on it, so that I don't touch my hand at all to the paper, because it's very absorbent. And I'm going to keep my finger right where my petal is, because it's amazing how quickly you can lose that where you're at. Okay. Fill that in. Take that quinacridone magenta and float it in. It's a fairly dark color, so I can, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more exuberant. What I'm seeing is there's a little bit of sort of that neutral tint in this area here. So I'm going to put that in with the quinacridone magenta, and we're going to continue on here, right to the edge of that. Okay. And in between, I think I'm going to take a little bit of that lovely rose and put it in between as a connector between. Oh, I think you might have heard Maggie there. She must be excited about something. I always hope nobody comes to the door, but you never know. Today is Canada Day, and I forgot to wish you Happy Canada Day for all you Canadians out there. I hope that you're having a lovely day, and we've had some heat this week that has been delicious and lovely, because we were at the top end of that heat bubble. It certainly wasn't the experience that many people had in BC or Alberta. That has been really difficult. So I'm hoping you stay cool, and as it moves into Manitoba now, I hope that everybody is safe there. It's a crazy heat wave that we've been having. My strawberries liked it because we got to 27 or 28 degrees Celsius. Like, that's just lovely. So we're not feeling like we're, I'm going to do the whole petal. Let's do that whole petal. I'm getting the water in place. So I haven't checked to see if anybody... Just wanted to say hello. Is anybody there? If you're there, say hello. If you're, and tell me how you're celebrating your Canada Day. I had out at 4 o'clock for a Feed the Fire to honor what's happening in Canada right now. While they're discovering, well, it's not discovering. They're just discovering the unmarked graves at the, oops, now look at that. I have to move quickly here, take my paper towel. I've pulled some of that green in, which doesn't normally happen very often, but there. So I've moved quickly and I pulled it out. I wasn't concentrating. Okay, so let's not go too close to the edge. It must not be as dry as I had hoped it would be. And we're going to do a nice light wash over the whole petal. Oops. Oh, that's old. My poor brushes are getting old. I will be so sad when these ones completely die. I've got some, but I didn't get this size when I ordered them, when I realized they were discontinuing them. Okay, I'm going to bring in the permanent rose. The other reds we will bring in as we darken up, because they're a darker red. They're a different. Okay, and I don't want too much. And that's way too much paint. So I'm just going to dry off my brush, clean my brush, dry off my brush, and move it around. It's quite fun to see, you know, how you can move around with watercolor. I know lots of people think watercolor is difficult. It's not actually difficult. What it is requires patience. And that is a lot of things in our life that require patience, that feel difficult because they required patience. And it requires knowing that drying it off and letting it really dry. So I probably won't paint on this again because I pulled in some of that green. I'm going to take that upstairs into my office and let it dry for a couple of days. And I'll work on another project until this background is completely dry. I often will have, like I'll do a background, but I'm working on another painting at the same time. But this time that didn't land at the same time, so. Hey, Candy. Oh, does it? Yeah, I don't know. I actually restarted my internet and stopped it, so I don't. It's just the way it is here. Northwest Hell is. Let's see if I can lift it up and maybe that will help. I'm just going to keep on painting, and if I have to, I'm recording at the same time, and I'll upload it later if I have to. Northwest Hell is just not providing good service, and it's Canada Day, and people are home, so I just work the best I can. Okay, so I've got a little space here that I'm going to work on, a little piece, and I just started right in with the paint because I can do that on a little section. And then pull that paint to where I want it to be. I'm really sorry that the technology is not being helpful. I don't know what to do about that. It's really frustrating to watch something that keeps freezing. I'm sorry about that. Oh, I'm going to have to do a phone call or something. Well, you know what? I have to wait for that to dry. So let's, that has to dry. These are dry. Okay. So why don't we, okay, let's go over here. Okay, before I get too far into that, I'm going to pull back that little area there. And that's good. Okay. Put my finger there and I can see where it's going. Okay. And I'm going to bring it around the water. Is it working yet? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that, Candy. I just, yeah, it probably is a Canada Day, everybody's home. But, you know, I live in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the bush. And we're a long distance from the regular world. I'm going to have to see what we can do to help with that. Okay, so I'm just building it up. I'm just going to put a message here on Facebook. Okay. Okay, I guess this week I'm going to have to do some serious, see if I can find a way to connect my internet right into my computer, because this is just annoying. Annoying. Okay, so I've got that done. Okay, well, let's choose the next petal to work on. After I get my... Okay, so... Well, let's have some fun. Let's put some darkness in here and start to build up this... do a second layer and start to build up the shapes that I'm starting to see, that I'm seeing, and I can start to do. By next week, I'm not sure how far along I'll get on this, but I will see what I can do to see if we can mitigate this problem that I'm having with Northwest Tel and our Wi-Fi system, because this is just not working for me. I don't know, it's kind of annoying for everybody. So here we are. Oh, there's some of that lovely, we're just going to build up an area here. And this is a cast shadow that another petal is created a shadow onto this petal. Building it up. Okay. And here we go. Let me bring that down here. Now this value is still pretty pale. It will be much darker by the time I get a bunch of, and I see that hint of that yellow in there. So let's put a little hint of that yellow, float it right in here so that it pushes against the purple. And we will continue on. I'm recording so I can fix it up. So I can see that I went over on this petal and I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to just touch that up and pull that paint back a little bit. Just with a damp brush and there. Pay more attention here instead of paying attention to the feed. Oh, look at what I've done here. Now, how did that happen? Okay. I don't even know how that happened. I must have got some green on my... Yeah, it's watercolor. It keeps redoing itself, so then you... Okay. I got most of it off. You won't see it at the end. It's on dark, so it should be all right. Even if it's light, nobody will notice. Okay, so let's do this light area here, this petal. We'll do this whole petal. Yep. Filling in this space here. And I see that that petal actually goes also over to here. So this is, and it's dry enough I should be able to get away with painting next to it. And you can see I had too much water. You see that hard edge? I'm not going to worry about that because I'll come back with a teeny tiny brush and I will sort that all out and it will be gone. at the end of the process. I'm pretty proficient at doing that these days. Have been for a while. Bring down here, and that's that rose, permanent rose. And this is really pale up here, so I'm just going to clean my brush off and dry it off and make it so that I can keep this really pale and push that darker paint over here, and I will darken it up. Again, this is really pale, so I'm just going to move the paint that I have on my brush around, because I put a little bit of water in there and it's enough to be able to get it in place. Now I went over, so I'm going to touch the edge. Oh, it's working now? Oh, good. Mine is still sagging, so I'm going to hit refresh and see if that will make a difference. Is that working better? Okay. Thank you, Northwest Hill, for starting to work again. Okay, so I'm just continuing on building up these petals and looking at them and thinking about what I'm seeing. I see a little bit of that hint of that glow right down here. And then I see some of this, and it's darker down here. Whew, that's a little bit too exuberant. Mind you, it's against white, so of course it looks really exuberant when it's against pure white. It doesn't help your value understanding a whole lot. Yeah, if you know, when you're looking at it against white, it looks really dark. But once you start to get in the other darker areas, and I will get a petal to completion before I continue on at some point here, because that will help me to know how dark I want, how dark it's going to be, and then I'll have my lightest areas in here as well. It's called keying your values. Okay, so that one's drying, this one's drying, that one's dry. Let's do, oh, look at that one. There's so much going on that you really don't see all of what's happening. But this one is really pretty. It's got that big orange glow. So I'm going to start with the yellow because I want that to be the base. I don't want it that bright because I want to, and it's a very intense color. So I know that I have the ability to move that paint around and still darken it up later. I'm going to take a little bit of that orange that I've made with the Quin Red and the New Gamboge, and I'm going to float it in just so that I know where it is. And then I can see that we have a little bit of the quinacridone magenta coming, and I'm just getting close to it so that they're not blending too much, because I don't want it to lose that where the orange is and have too much go in. So, okay. So pretty. I love these peonies. I am super excited. My peony has 12 blossoms on it. And I'll tell you, I've been waiting for several years for it to actually decide to do that. So I'm happy, happy, happy. And this really warm weather, though ours was comfortably warm, it was really helpful. Okay, so I'm not seeing any yellow in there. Even though I see it next to it, on this petal, I'm not seeing the yellow. I'm just going to bring that all in. Okay. Okay, so let's do this one at the end. Again, it's quite bright, so I can start with the pure paint. Well, it's not pure paint, the paint. And it's a small area, so I can start, and then I can spread the paint to the edge and around. Try not to touch that green. And it could be a little bit more intense. I'll just float some in by just taking some paint on my brush and just touching it, and it'll pull the paint off the brush and into what's already wet. That doesn't work when it's dry, but when it's wet, it works really well. Take my brush and just move it around. Okay, there we go. Here is, okay, it's, you know, there's so many different variations happening in here. This is dry enough now I can come in. My brush had some paint on it. I'm not worried about having too much paint on it because it's not that light. It's going to be darker, and it's going to be, it's in the cast shadow area. Though it's not as dark as this cast shadow area, it is darker, and it extends right over here. So it's always good to know where you're extending to. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that quinacridone magenta with just a tiny, tiny touch of the neutral tint to bring that value down and to bring, and then I'm going to take that neutral tint and I'm going to do the same thing with the permanent rose so that I can get, you can see, maybe it's the green that I need to do. Okay, yeah, okay. So with the permanent rose, the neutral tint doesn't work as nicely as the phthalo green blue shade does. So I know that this is in the cast shadow, so it's nowhere is it going to see get any direct light on it. So that's, so put some of that there. That's that. And then take some of the quin magenta and put it in place in the corner. I had a little bit of water in here, and it's fairly dark, but I can't see how dark it is compared to what's next to it yet because I don't have things to that point. Now I can see that I have gone over the edge, so I'm going to take my paper towel in and just touch that a little bit and pull it back. And I can see here that I got all these white bits, so if I'm going to work that so that it disappears, I don't want all those white bits there. I want it to meet petal to petal. At the end, I let it dry for 4 or 5 days, and I do this with a tiny brush, making sure that there is no white showing at all. Oh, I will take pictures. Oh, I totally will take pictures. I will be sharing them. If you're on my weekly newsletter, you'll be seeing them there. That'll probably be the first place I post them, so that you guys who are following the live streams will be the first to see it. Okay, now let's do this petal here. And I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, okay. So let's get some water on the area that I'm looking at. Oh, I need a better brush for that. So I'm going to go back to my silver black velvet that has, it just retains more water. It's actually, the brush that I used was a 1-inch one of these to do the background. Okay, come down here. That looks like it's a bend. Of course, the wind is blowing when you're taking pictures, so the petals just do their windy twisting and turning. And when you're looking at the image, you're trying to figure out, is that what am I looking at? Is that a twisty turny petal? It seems to me like it feels like, it looks like it is. Okay. I'm going to bring a bigger brush in because I've got a bigger area. So this is a number 12, size 12. And I'm going to start with the lightest area. Just start lightly putting in. There's all sorts of, peonies are so pretty. They just bend and move. Hey Judy, welcome. Thank you. You know, I do, well, I did a fair amount of teaching before COVID happened. And I haven't taught in a while. So it's kind of nice to get back to teaching and thinking about my process and what I'm doing and what sort of moves me to take up and do different things. Oops, I don't want that. I want just that permanent rose. I just want a hint of it. I think I've got way too much on my brush, so I'm going to clean off my brush and just take a little bit of that paint. Thinking about the fact that it's bending over, the petal is blowing in the wind, and there's a bendy part there. And I have this lovely cast shadow in here that we will darken up in the next round just to get in place. What's nice about this red is it doesn't move. Once you get it in place, you don't really have to worry about moving it and having it go like pull off when you go to work on it. It's pretty staining, which is why you put the water on and it's why you start slow, because if you go too exuberantly, then you can't take it off. It just is so intense. And the phthalo green that I'm working with in here to when I'm changing the value and bringing the chroma down for the permanent rose, it's super staining as well. You always have to be moving carefully with watercolor paint. And then there are paints that do lift up, and that's a bit of a challenge when you layer like I do. So, you know, you really have to know your paints and understand what they're doing and what their properties are. Some paints you put in next to it and it just explodes out, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a level of control. And other paints are less so. Okay, so what have I done here? Is this dry enough? I think this is dry enough. So let's move on to this one here. By the end of, you know, I want to get that first layer done so that I have everything sort of in place, and as I do these layers, what I do is that it gives me time to really look closely at the image. I don't have to have a really huge image next to me. I don't have to paint sight size with flowers. When I'm working with my birds, I will have an image that is exactly the same size as I'm painting, because they have so much more detail, and that's what my focus is making sure I accurately depict the detail that I'm seeing and the patterning that's on the bird. But flowers give you a little bit more flexibility, and that's quite lovely actually. Okay, so I'm looking down here and I'm seeing, no, I'm not seeing any glow. Okay, what I did do is I wet an area here that actually isn't that petal. So I will come back. I'm not going to worry about if it goes over, because honestly, there's a lot more work to be done on this. Bring that permanent rose in here. And this is a dark area, but I still don't want to go too dark, so I just clean off my brush, dry it off, kind of, enough to dry it off, so I'm not bringing too much water in here, because you get really hard edges. Like in this area, you can see the hard edge. again, it's not a huge issue. I can deal with that. Just takes patience and time. In fact, tomorrow I will be pulling out the okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. My end is going to be interesting. Okay, well, we'll just figure that out. I don't know what we're going to do at the end. I might just have to end here because my card is full on my little camera, and I thought about that today. I thought, oh, well, I'll have to clear that off because it goes for a long time. Well, guess I'm going to be clearing that off at the end, like after. Oh, live streams, you know? Just have to be flexible. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. And as, you know, as it starts to fill in, you know, you're starting to get a little sense, not a whole lot of sense, but you're a little sense of where things are. And it is nice when the paper is completely covered and you don't have any white hanging around. Woo! That was way too exuberant. So I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm going to move that paint around. Yeah, there we go. Move it around, move it out. There. There's a bend in there. Hopefully this other camera doesn't fill up too. We'll wait and see. Okay, pay more attention. Okay, this needs to dry. That's drying. Okay, what do we see over here? I wonder if, oh, here. Let's go here and let's do this bigger part over here. Pull this closer so I can see it. So this is a cupped version of it, and of the petal. So I'm going to fill this in. This is going to be a luscious, intense color. The sun is shining through, but it's still in shadow. It's really pretty. All the variations make it really so much fun. Okay. Okay, bringing my bigger brush, I'm seeing that, and I'm going to be a little bit more brave with this one because it has, even with this, it will be far more intense yet than what you're seeing. I'm going to grab a little bit of that permanent rose and float it next to it. And I'm going to take a little smaller brush, a number 8, and I'm going to pull this paint out because I want it lighter at the edge because I can see that it has a lighterness, like it's just a little lighter at the edge. Pull that up. Dry my brush, clean it off, and just touch the edge so that it'll go to the edge of the petal. I don't want to dry it off too much. I need a little bit of moisture to help that paint float to the edge. Okay, back to the bigger brush and back to the quinacridone magenta. Moving quickly here because I can see already I'm starting to lose my moisture. I didn't put enough water on. As I said, it's both your friend and your foe, this water. Okay. What I'm seeing is a different shape, so I'm going to pull that back so I can get to that shape that I'm seeing. And a little bit of the permanent rose right in here and just have it there. Okay. I will come back and fix that the next round through, because the next round through what I'll do is I'll bring this petal all the way up into it, because I hadn't realized that this was the flip over part. And there's a flip over part here as well. It's lovely how the wind just makes the flowers even more interesting to paint as a result. It's interesting when you take pictures of flowers, I am out in the bright sunshine, as bright as I can get, though I do try to do different times of the day because noontime brightness is a little intense. So later in the day works better for me because the sun gets up in Yellowknife at like 2 something in the morning or 3 in the morning. By the time I'm up at 8, it's already high in the sky. So I don't worry about the morning light as much as I worry about like the evening light is where I'm going. And last night I was out at midnight and there were all kinds of people out, and they were you know, coming in off the lakes from their boats because it's light. People were out biking and it's midnight. And the sun had gone down, and it was, I have to shut off the upper camera and turn it back on. Okay, that's the last time I have to do that in this hour. You know what? It's not very humid in Yellowknife. Judy, it's not very humid in Yellowknife. The biggest problem I have is how dry it is here. So today is a little bit more humid because we had some rain this morning, but we don't get a lot of humidity. And when we get it, it's like, whoa, this is so strange. So I think with humidity, it would take longer to dry, but that's not my issue. My issue is how dry is it already, and I have to move quickly because it dries very quickly. And even though I'm in the basement painting, because the basements tend to hold more, just they're cooler and they're damper, that's not an issue, especially in the new house. Our house was replaced in 2015, 2016 because we had a massive oil leak and they had to take down our house. So the new basement is even more, is even more well insulated, like it's super well insulated. We don't even go through 800 liters of fuel oil in the winter. And this winter, they called to say, are you heating with, pellets? Do you have a pellet stove or something? We have no place in this house. It's not a very big house, and there's no place for a pellet stove. But that's how energy efficient this new house is, which makes it really nice in the winter. You know, it keeps things warmer for us, which we appreciate. Though, when you see me in my live streams in when it's 50 below out, you're going to see me in like layers and layers and layers. And I will have to turn on the heater, and I'll turn it on and heat up the room before we start. And then I will try not to turn it on the whole time I'm here, because it's really, I wait until the last possible minute, till I'm so cold I don't really have a choice. And then I turn it on. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes, so let's keep going here. We've got lots to do still, lots of areas to still cover, at least on the first layer. Let's do this one here. I think it's dry enough. I should be able to finish this one with just a thin thing of water, not too exuberant with the water. and light, 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 because this is really light, this turnover. It's capturing the light, and it has some interesting shapes in it that I will have fun getting to when I get there. Okay, so there we go. We're getting there, slowly but surely. Patience is the name of the game. So I'm going to cover over that green so I don't get water droplets as I start to move further away from where the water is. And now we're going to come, and I'm going to bring over here. And we're going to come over here and we're going to start these petals. So how are you managing all the heat? I know Candy doesn't have it yet, and it's just on the edge of my parents' place in northwestern Ontario, and it's certainly in Winnipeg. How are you managing the heat, Judy? I'm not sure where you actually live, Judy. Do you, you might live in a place that actually is really hot all the time, and, you know, I wouldn't know that. Okay, and a little bit of the, so I started with the quinacridone magenta, and now I'm with the permanent rose, which is such a pretty color. My very favorite color, though, is opera pink, but it is a dye, not a pigment, and its rating for lastability is, yeah, it's not very good. So I'm, now I can see that I've got it too dark. So what am I going to do? I'm going to bring in a little bit of water, not too much, and I'm going to move it around and move that paint around so that it thins it out and lightens up the value. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. Let's see what we're looking at. Okay, we're going to go to this one here. So again, I'll need my larger silver black velvet, and I will fill this in, and I'm looking at that whole shape to see what I'm seeing, and it has this little tail here to do. And because it's a bigger shape, I'm going to use a bigger brush. I want to hold more paint. I want to not run out of paint too quickly, and I want to be able to move quickly. Oh, you're in southern Wisconsin. Okay. Oh, 100% humidity. Oh my goodness gracious. Without any rain happening. Yeah, I don't even know what our humidity level is because we really don't get a lot of humidity. So you'll be getting that bubble of hot weather that is coming from the west and moving across, because I'm pretty sure it's not just in BC, and it doesn't stop at the Canadian-U.S. border. It looked like it was a big system, that high pressure system. Have you had enough rain so that you're not worried about fires? Because that level of heat is a bit of a challenge. Okay. Yep, I like that. There we go. I like that. I'm going to put a little bit of that rose in, kind of sort of in a line here, and just move that up a little bit just to. Yeah, you really do need air conditioning. Oh, I have a little visitor. I'm not going to do anything with him. He can just walk around my painting. Summertime, bugs and all. Welcome to Painting with Shawna. Okay, now I'm looking at this one here, and I'm seeing that I didn't draw it totally correct, because I'm using a bigger brush, I'm going to just plop that paint in and then come with water and move it. And I'm really looking at the shape here to do a little correction in that shape so that I have, because in behind is that really pretty yellowy glow of orange, and yes, it's very pretty. So we're just the last 5 minutes. I'm not going to be able to do my normal at the end. You know, you can see me kind of ending because I didn't clear out the the card. So we'll just end here when it's time to end. You've been in a drought. Okay, so where is Wisconsin compared to a province in Canada? Because I know where Minnesota is, and I know where North Dakota is, because we lived just north of North Dakota when we lived in Winkler, Manitoba, when we first got married 40 years ago. But I'm unsure where Wisconsin is completely. Other than there's something about cheese. Wisconsin's cheese seems to be a memory that I have. Okay. Okay, I can bring that right to the edge here. Okay. I know Manitoba's been having problems with big extreme droughts too. So if you're close to Manitoba border or in that area. Oh, that's really sad. Well, you know, in 2014 we had a super dry year, and we had record forest fires here, and it was, I couldn't even paint because the air was so sort of that acrid yellow. I couldn't even paint because I couldn't see what my paint should look like even. Ooh, this is a nice dark one, so I'm gonna just be a cheeky one and put in a little bit more paint in this one. Okay. Okay. So that would be a 2-day drive. That would be like me driving to Edmonton from here. It's a 17-hour drive to Edmonton from here. So we do it in a 2-day way of doing it. That's really stressful on the trees when they lose their leaves in the spring like that. That's really stressful. That's really worrisome. Okay. Well, we're just going to continue on here. Okay, so this is a big one, but because now I'm reaching such a distance, I think I'm going to wait until I can get my turning thing going, because I don't want to make you guys sick, so I haven't done that. But here, we got one over here that we can do. Okay. Okay, so let's do this darker one back here. I have to be careful where I'm putting it next to, because I know that this petal is still drying, and it's probably dry enough, and I need a smaller brush by quite a bit, not that small. I'm going to take a number 6, and I'm going to take a little bit of the neutral tint and add it into the Quin Magenta to sort of deepen that color and lower the chroma of it. So my son in Alberta is a gardener, and of course they're in that middle of a drought as well, with that extreme heat. And so he has a rain barrel that he adds in all the gray water that he's been using, so he can use it. He puts it in there, and then he can use it for watering his plants outside. so that, you know, bath water, everything is not being wasted. Well, we are done our hour. I'm sorry that I didn't empty my camera so you can't see me. I want to thank you for coming. If you want to sign up for my newsletter so that you can get all that, okay, whatever. So you can see pictures as I'm going along and see other pictures of what I'm hear stories about my birding. Please go to my website, like my page on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for coming. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.